Welcome back to Kings of the North, Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Landis, we're gonna take the draft. I was talking to you this weekend. Thanks everybody who's being here, you bunch of Northern college football nuts. We were talking this weekend. We just had the NFL draft, which is a lovely way to spend a long weekend. And I was saying how I get a little aggravated by it at times because at some point I get tired of our sport being used or talked about as a sausage factory for somebody else's sport. And by about the fifth round, I'm like, okay, doesn't our sport also matter for its own sake? And I maybe wanted to come on here and just shout about that for 90 minutes. And then you said, no, people get it. They don't have to have you scream at them about that.
I do think people get it. I think a lot of us, myself included, I would say tend to fall into that mode a little bit over draft weekend, but I feel like I shake it off rather quickly. I think college football fans shake it off rather quickly. I do find it frustrating at times, and I get that it's difficult. The crossover between the two, you have people who are experts in the NFL trying to talk about college in a way that they're not really qualified to do, and people who are experts in college football trying to talk about the intricacies of NFL front offices in a way they're not qualified to do. So I don't like much of that, but you get by it after 2 or 3 days, and I think it's fun.
You don't like much of that, but that's 85% of it half the time.
That's all it is.
Is people on the two ends of the spectrum who have actual expertise in their thing trying to cross over and talk about the other thing in a completely idiotic way. Anyway,
I do though, for instance, I watched mostly the NFL Network draft coverage.
Yeah.
And they had Joel Klatt on the dais, which I thought was a nice addition for them. I don't know. I know that ESPN has the two separate broadcasts, but maybe they would serve themselves better by combining the two and having some college and NFL expertise mingling with each other in one broadcast.
We just would like to remind everybody, if you are still shaking it off a little bit and you're like, hey, what? College football exists for its own purposes. And there are wonderful things that happen on Saturdays. And whether or not the magnificent young men who perform those activities get picked in the second round or the sixth round or not at all does not change the fact that you and your friends had an awesome time on Saturday. So I just would like to state that for the record.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the draft because we looked at the draft on Wednesday. But what we are going to do is look at our sport and say what the draft told us about our sport, because something happened for me, Landis, that previously I was sort of like this. Hey, that's kind of crazy. Oh, yeah, no, I was thinking about that. And now I think, oh, our sport is changing. Did that happen to you? Or am I just behind on things? Again, and as regular viewers and listeners of this show know, occasionally I have lightning bolt moments. And it turns out that everybody else is over there saying, yeah, Doug, welcome to reality, but we've been here for 18 months. This is not a lightning bolt. This is us hitting you in the head with the 2x4 because you were slow to come around on this.
No, I'm probably more with you in this case. Okay. My eyes were opened a little bit over draft weekend, maybe to some things I had been thinking, but I now sit here believing they're sort of crystallized. And there's also one college football opinion that I've had for a while that I have now done a 180 on based off what the draft told us.
Okay.
About the
quarterback is mostly what we're talking about here. We're also going to run through, we have our numbers, North versus South. I've got some numbers. You're not going to get these numbers anywhere else. I think, again, the overall view, we're just reminding you that if you choose to view it through our lens, which we think is not just for our show, but is the most realistic way to view the sport, it's split North-South. It's not as much about conferences as it is about culture, as it is about geography. And conferences used to be associated with geography, and they are much less so now in many ways. So you can get caught up in the shorthand of conference stuff that is not really telling you about the sport. We got stuff at the end about that. North versus South. We have position groups that the North won in the draft that will blow your mind. And it's telling us some stuff. We're going to start with quarterback, and something happened in this draft, Landis, that hadn't happened in at least the previous decade. And we would have known this going in, but it's not where our heads were, but we're reconfirming this. There were no third-year quarterbacks taken in this draft. There were no quarterbacks who were in college, who were out of high school for only 3 years and then went to the pros. And I looked at the previous 9 drafts, 2016 through 2024, so we could have a decade of information here, right? The previous 9, what happened in this one? The previous 9 drafts, 106 quarterbacks were taken. 22% of those quarterbacks were 3-year guys. 26% were 4-year guys, 39% were 5-year guys, and 13% were 6-year guys. Okay. So about a quarter of them were like, hey, this is the 3 and out. This is Bryce Young. This is C.J. Stroud. This is Jared Goff falls into the category. And there were none this year. The 12 quarterbacks taken this year, there were no 3rd-year guys. Half of them were 4th-year guys, and then 25% were 5th-year guys, and 25% were 6th-year guys. And so, Landis, this is informing us in a way that we think is potentially very important for the future of the quarterback position in college football. It could affect how we view the quarterbacks in this sport this year and next, how we view second-year quarterbacks we think are going to start this year, Julian Sayin, C.J. Carr, guys like that. And then, hey, what does it mean for their careers and how their schools should plan for their futures? And we think maybe there's a shift taking place here. Or maybe the class of 2022 quarterbacks were very good and none of them were ready. So the top 10 quarterbacks by recruiting rating in the class of 22, the 3rd-year guys who could have come out. Cade Klubnik at Clemson would have been drafted, could have come out. Connor Wegman, Texas A&M, lost his job, transferred to Houston. I don't know. Ty Simpson has not played at Alabama yet, probably going to be the starter this year. Drew Aller at Penn State, certainly that. And then really a bunch of guys who haven't played much, including Gunnar Stockton. So let's start here. This is interesting. Yes, no 3rd-year quarterbacks taken in at least for the first time in at least 10 years.
Yes, it is. I'm like pulling myself back from making a little too much of just like that particular nugget, because like there's more to this conversation than just that. Like that is, well, I don't know. Yeah, I think it is a thing, because to your point, like Cade Klubnik and Drew Aller could have come out. Whatever you think of them, their viability to start in the NFL, like immediately, they could have come out. They probably both would have been drafted higher than everyone not named Cam Ward and Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck, I guess. So it's a thing. I think it's just a question of like, was it a thing? Is it a thing because it's a thing, or is it a thing because the 2022 quarterback class just sort of lended itself to this reality for this one particular year?
What do you think? What do you think?
I don't know.
We're on alert to watch this now. Here's the point that we're going to tell you our point. And in conclusion, 8 minutes into the show, watch this. For your school, for your team, for your assumptions about young quarterbacks, for building quarterback rooms, for how you view transfer decisions of older quarterbacks, there is definitely something that has happened in the last 5 years, 6 years, where the NFL used to not like old quarterbacks, and now they do like old quarterbacks. And it used to be, we want to get a young quarterback, and then that way we develop him, and we can win with him while he's young, and then he'll still be young when he gets to the second contract and all that. And now I think they've realized there's so much quarterback failure. They would like a more developed, complete package when they get it. And so maybe you're ready to hit winning time sooner while these quarterbacks are on their rookie contracts. But I do think that's undeniable, that there has been a shift in that, in the NFL's preference. But I think what we are seeing now is there's the NFL's preference, but it's still like, well, I'm young, I want to get paid. But now you can get paid in college. And the culmination of that, the combination of that, where before the NFL's new preference was just kind of hanging out there. And a lot of that was driven by the transfer portal. That was driven a little bit by the COVID stuff, that you had quarterbacks like Michael Penix and Bo Nix, and Joe Burrow was an early adapter of this, to go from Ohio State to LSU get 2 years to start at LSU and become Joe Burrow, right? And then he comes out and he is ready to go right away. And he's not some young guy. He's like a fully developed dude. That was already happening. But it's the NIL piece that I think clarified for us, right? We had am I doing my face? Is my face changing with my hand? We were like this. And now we're like this. Right now we're like, because the most important quarterback situation that happened in the NFL draft for the future of college football was not Shedeur Sanders. It was not the Shedeur Sanders unexpected fall from perception, right? It was Quinn Ewers. The Quinn Ewers situation is what possibly we think is changing the face of the college football quarterback marketplace.
I think that's right, but I would actually, I would say there are three that I would point to.
Okay,
Quinn Ewers, definitely. I would say Tyler Shough, who bounced around to 3 different programs, but hung around college football long enough to find the right one to help convince NFL teams that he was worthy of almost being a first-round pick at the age of whatever he is, 38. And then the other one is Will Howard, who transferred from Kansas State to Ohio State at the time, thinking that he might have been a 5th-round pick had he come out. And then he went to Ohio State to improve his draft stock, and then he ended up being a 6th-round pick. But in the process of doing that, at least he stayed in school, got paid more last year at Ohio State. I'm assuming that he's going to get paid in his rookie year with the Steelers, and he won a national championship. So, like, those 3 things, Quinn Ewers is the one that shines, like, sort of grabs your attention the most, of course, given his trajectory and career arc. But I think those 3 examples are all pretty compelling reasons to stay in school unless you're a guy who's like a bona fide first-round pick.
Yes.
If you know it. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to draw some more conclusions at the end. A year ago, everybody does their way too early mock draft stuff. PFF a year ago did their way too early first-round mock draft for 2025. They had 3 quarterbacks in the first round a year ago. They had Carson Beck at Georgia as the first one. They had Shedeur Sanders of Colorado, and they had Quinn Ewers of Texas. Carson Beck stayed in school, transferred to Miami, reportedly got $4 million to go to Miami. Shedeur Sanders was out of eligibility. He came out and did not go as high as expected. And Quinn Ewers, in the end, this is not a criticism of Quinn Ewers. This is, I think, a realization for the sport. Quinn Ewers should have stayed. I think he should have transferred from Texas to somewhere else for a 1-year, I'm going to call it like a postdoctorate quarterback degree. Because one of the things that I think is happening, I saw our good friend Shahan made this point, and I believe in this point. Sometimes you're just ready to be done with college.
Definitely.
And, well, this would make the most sense. And this is the money. It's like, I just want to be done. I don't want to take any more classes here. All my friends are leaving and all that kind of thing. Right. Mm-hmm. So there was this idea. There was a discussion at the end of the season with Texas, even before the end of the season with Texas, is Quinn Ewers maybe going to transfer somewhere because it's time for Arch Manning at Texas. And there was that discussion. There were reports about how much money he might be offered. I didn't know what to make of it. I was not particularly enamored with it. I didn't know. It's like, I don't know. You're going to stay? I mean, the guy, what else is there to stay for? And my mind about that discussion has completely changed now. And I think we are entering a new phase of college football quarterback marketplace. I wonder if Quinn Ewers' mind has completely changed about that discussion. Best of luck to him with the Miami Dolphins. How much have you changed about the idea of, hey, Quinn Ewers leaving Texas, not going to the pros, transferring somewhere else to be the clear starter, making more there than he would in the NFL? That is no longer a thing to talk about, but an actual plan that is going to become an even more normal part of college football.
I think my mind has changed on it some. I guess I would say that in my mind, it's not like, boy, Quinn Ewers made a terrible mistake, because I don't know what his motivations were. And as you said, like, sometimes you just want to be done with college. Sometimes he's a Texas kid who played for Texas, and that relationship kind of ran its course, and maybe he just didn't want to play for anybody else. You might as well go to the NFL. But now we sort of have like data. We have the ramifications of making a decision like that I don't know that we had before, that I think will influence more players, or at least be a much larger part of their thought process now if they're in a similar position to Quinn Ewers. And certainly for me, like, will be in my mind now as I contemplate, like, oh, this guy's gone after this year. Well, maybe he's not. Like I probably in the past would have just assumed that any borderline is probably not quite it, but something near a borderline quarterback would just go to the NFL, because why wouldn't you go and start your earning sort of timeline as a professional? But now we know what college football is and what guys can make. So I am rethinking that. I guess the one thing I would say that has been in my mind a little bit is, like, we know what the market sort of is now because of Carson Beck and the $4 million thing. How much will the market, like, shift with their rev share era and, like, NIL sort of being transformed a little bit? Like, are the numbers still going to be that high? Are they going to be a little lower, where the NFL becomes a little more appealing for guys who might be like mid-round or worse quarterbacks? I'm not entirely sure of that, but as things stand right now, I'm going to operate under the assumption that top of the line college quarterbacks are going to be looking at probably $3 million a year ish. And that is probably going to drastically change the way that those guys operate as it pertains to whether or not they're going to leave for the NFL.
So the thing about the NFL is just, this is not a contract show. This is not a lawsuit show. This is not a court case show. But the NFL has a structure to all of its rookie deals. I mean, like, you can go look up, this is the expectation of what you're going to make. So the first pick of the second round is going to make less than $2 million a year, which when the Browns had that pick and it was like, oh man, maybe the Browns will take Shedeur Sanders with the first pick in the second round. They took him in the fifth round. That player is looking at a 4-year, $10.9 million contract, making just under $2 million in 2025. That's the first pick of the second round. The slot that Quinn Ewers got picked at in the seventh round is looking at a $4.3 million contract for 4 years. That's a little over $1 million a year. How many Power 4 expected starting quarterbacks do you think are making less than $1 million a year in this era? Like Darian Mensah to go to Duke is making more than that. I don't know what Preston Stone got to go to Northwestern. Certainly in that range would not surprise me. What's Diego Pavia making at Vanderbilt, right? We're talking about Duke, Vanderbilt, and Northwestern. And the guys who are getting paid to be the quarterbacks there might be making more per year this year than what Quinn Ewers is going to make in the NFL. Like, that is a stark reality that, again, maybe our very educated, dedicated, loyal, smart Northern college football fans are like, yeah, I knew that. Maybe all the agents in the sport knew that. But I'm not sure. I think this was perhaps a crystallization, man. And that idea, and again, it's not that like, oh, Quinn Ewers, oh, you're going to go somewhere for a year and be a transfer. You mean like Riley Leonard, Dylan Gabriel, and Will Howard did last year? It's like, oh, Kyle McCord, same thing. Way to invent that, Doug. It already happened a million times. But I felt like Quinn Ewers sort of was maybe more in control, or like a tier up from those kind of guys. And it was like, well, what's Will Howard going to do? He's going to be a fifth rounder. I guess he can go, I don't know. That I think the discussion for quarterbacks like this has expanded to almost everybody other than sure thing, you're a top 5 pick no matter what you do, like Caleb Williams. Okay, we're not having this conversation about Caleb Williams, but almost everybody else.
Well, it's interesting to me that it was unintentional, but like the NFL player advisory board, like grading scale changed a couple of years ago to where it was like first round, second round, or go back to school. And it's like, yeah,
yes,
it really should be that now, especially if you're a quarterback. Because the other thing about like Quinn Ewers, whatever, the $4.3 million overall contract value, like that's not guaranteed. The only thing that's guaranteed, I think, is the $131,000 signing bonus that he's going to get, and then he'll hope to make the team. Maybe he will. He probably will. To to get that money in the first place. Where it's like I don't know what every single quarterback and the starting quarterback in the P4 is making. I know they're all making more than $131,000 this year. I could say that definitively. I would imagine most of them are making more than $1 million. Maybe there's a couple that are more in like the $600,000 to $800,000 range, but almost all of them, and definitely Quinn Ewers, had he transferred, would be making more wherever he was going to play this fall in college than he's going to make over the next 4 years if he lasts that long with the Miami Dolphins.
So there was like a little bit of a percolating Quinn Ewers Michigan thing. I have no idea if it was real. I have no idea where it came from, but like, didn't you hear that?
Definitely.
In December, right?
Heard a little Michigan, heard like, boy, wouldn't it be funny if Ohio State and Quinn Ewers got back together for 1 year?
So, and at the time I was like, I don't know. But now for Michigan, for instance, so Michigan got Mikey Keene, and we already did a show about Bryce Underwood. But if you had Bryce Underwood, but you had Quinn Ewers there, and you just could let Underwood learn and prepare and be a wrinkle QB like JJ McCarthy was, and then you're still going to get plenty of time for Bryce Underwood to be the guy. But instead of Mikey Keene, because Bryce Underwood very well can be better than Mikey Keene, especially when Mikey Keene was hurt during spring. But it's going to be hard for him maybe to be better than Quinn Ewers, right? So this would have been good for Michigan. But that idea seems so smart and logical, and it seems 100 times more real to me now, post-draft, thinking about all this, than it did pre-draft. Did you think it seemed real in December? And again, I'm just slow-witted and slow on the draw and not embracing that idea then?
You like specific to Quinn Ewers or just general? Well, I mean, I guess my answer to both.
Quinn Ewers.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think so. Yeah. Yes.
You think I'm slow-witted?
I don't think you're slow-witted, but it was that seemed far more logical to me. Or I guess I would say like it seemed very logical to me at the time. Yeah, I wouldn't.
It did. Okay.
What you thought about it? Yeah.
You were all in. You were all in on like, yeah, the way college football works, that makes total sense.
Yes.
For Quinn Ewers to go be the quarterback at Michigan. Okay. Maybe I needed this. Okay. So here's how it affects us beyond Quinn Ewers. And best of luck to Quinn Ewers. PFF this year, their guys did a little mock draft for 2026. They wound up with 6 quarterbacks in the first round. Arch Manning, who will be a third-year quarterback at Texas this year. Cade Klubnik, fourth-year guy. Garrett Nussmeier, we can't escape him, LSU, fifth-year guy. Sam Leavitt, Arizona State, formerly of Michigan State. There's a sliding door. We want a sliding door our offseason. Who knew that the Mel Tucker era at Michigan State exploding was going to shoot off a playoff first-round quarterback to Kenny Dillingham? I certainly wasn't. When Sam Leavitt transferred from Michigan State, I wasn't like, well, there goes the 18th pick in the draft, leaving East Lansing, and here we are.
It's kind of a weird thing, too, because he left a coach he's from Oregon, and he left the coach that had come from Oregon State to go play at Arizona State. Because
Jonathan Smith picked Aiden Childs, I guess. Well, have to read the legislate that. So Sam Leavitt, third-year guy. Drew Aller, fourth-year guy. And Lenore Sellers from South Carolina, third-year guy. So we are looking, right? Here's your early draft. We're back to, they're projecting 3 guys who would be first-round picks after just 3 years in college. Is that the way we should be thinking? Or should already... So Arch might be in the C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, no doubt about it, I got to go Caleb Williams camp, possibly. Also, his family has a gazillion dollars, and maybe he's more than happy to play 4 years in college and be a 2-year starter.
I think, didn't Peyton and Eli both play 4 years too?
Yeah. So his decision could slot into this, but I think the reasons behind it would be different.
Sure.
I, as a result of our discussion here, am thinking less about the idea of Lenore Sellers of South Carolina and Sam Leavitt of Arizona State being like, they're going to be first rounders. This is their last year, Arizona State and South Carolina. You better prepare for those guys to leave. They're going to be out the door. I am not thinking that way anymore. Because the minute you slide from the middle of the first round to the middle of the second round, you're now going to make less than you did in college. And plus, the NFL seems to like if you stay. So you might enhance your status with the NFL and get paid more. And so here, other third-year guys, these are other guys who will be in their third year of college football this year. Aiden Childs at Michigan State, Nico Iamaleava at UCLA, Dante Moore at Oregon, Jackson Arnold at Ole Miss, Avery Johnson at Kansas State, Eli Holstein at Pitt, Marcel Reed at Texas A&M, Austin Simmons as a first-year starter at Ole Miss that people are super excited about. I think in the past, we might have looked like guys like that and been like, okay, if any of those guys make a leap, they might be gone. I'm not thinking that way with any of them. I am much more locked in on you can be a superstar college quarterback and be in college for 4 years, maybe 5, and be very interested in using up all of your eligibility. I've changed. I'm a new man.
I don't think a third-year quarterback's going to get drafted next year.
Look at you. Can we stick this claim?
I just think there's so much special circumstance around Arch Manning that I kind of, before we did any of this and dove into these numbers, I kind of thought that Arch was going to stay for 2 years at Texas. And now, like, looking at the landscape, unless like Sam Leavitt gets strapped to a rocket ship this year and Arizona State is awesome and they make the playoff again, and it's like, yeah, that guy's the 5th pick in the draft. I don't know that I look at Sam Leavitt and Lenoris Sellers as guys who are going to come out after the third year. And I don't think anybody from the other list you mentioned is even, maybe Nico, I guess, like, who knows? But I guess I shouldn't say it so definitively when Nico is one of the guys who could prove me wrong. But I don't know that looking at this group, I see a absolute slam dunk. This guy's coming out after his third year. Arch's recruiting profile would tell you that he is that. But again, everything else about his circumstances, at the moment, is leading me to believe he'll stay in school for 2 more years.
Because here's the other thing. Once it starts, so now Cade Klubnik and Drew Aller are still in college when they could have gone pro. And so a year from now, NFL teams, when they are comparing Lenoris Sellers and Sam Leavitt and Arch Manning to Drew Aller and Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier, those other guys are much more experienced. They have more starts. They've had more ups and downs. They've learned more. And so now that also might push the third-year guys down because there are more 4th and 5th-year guys. Mm-hmm. And if you are not Superman, if you are not the exception to the rule, and that's the thing, I think, Bill, we are in the process of moving from, oh, you're a 5-star quarterback, you come in, you're ready to play in year 2, you're going to be a 3-year guy and out. And that's the norm. I think the norm is changing.
I think that's right. And I would also say, like, if you look at that list of guys you laid out of like third year guys who could go out, there was a time, probably 2 years ago even, where I would have said, like, even if Lenoris Sellers is very raw as a quarterback, the height, weight, speed athlete there would be too enticing for him to not be a first-round pick.
Yep.
Like the version of that this year was Jalen Milroe, and he was the 92nd pick in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I don't, and again, unless Lenoris Sellers becomes Cam Newton overnight, which I don't think he's going to do, I view him now as a guy who's going to be a starter at South Carolina for 2 more years, or at least a starter at South Carolina for 1 year, then somewhere else the year after if it's not South Carolina.
I apologize. I should be better at my job. Jalen Milroe had a year of eligibility left, right? He wasn't a third-year guy, but he had a year left, didn't he?
I don't know. I can look that up.
We can come back to that. Anyway, that's a point I'll make later. It's just like eligibility for college quarterbacks is viewed differently, I think. So I'll get to that point later. Here's the point I want to make now.
Milroe did have a year. Yeah.
Milroe had a year.
Yeah.
And again, we are not here to call out like individual players. Everybody has one life, one career, one opportunity. They make the best decision for them. But can you imagine if Jalen Milroe had been on the college free agent market and said, I'm in the portal, come get me? How about Jalen Milroe at Georgia this year?
Yeah. I mean, the two biggest quarterback numbers that I'm aware of are Carson Beck's $4 million. And I think Darian Benson was like 3.5 to Duke. Jalen Miller is making that kind of money if he's on the market.
Dante Moore could make a huge leap at Oregon this year, right? How's Jalen Milroe at Oregon feel? Get a little, You got some vibes on that? You vibing on Jalen Milroe?
I'd watch it.
At Oregon? Like this is, and so again, like this is, again, think about this versus he's the 92nd pick. And he's going to make money, but he's not going to make as much money in the year 2025 as he would have if he had stayed in college. And he is a supremely talented player with a lot of potential. But just think about it what would that have been, Bill? Okay, let's think about it this way. What would that have been? What would that have been? Because wait, there's a point. I'm getting ahead of my point. Let's think about this first. Are we blowing your mind, people? Our sport is changing. Hey, what's the offseason like in college football? Well, Quinn Ewers and Jalen Milroe are both going in the portal to the highest bidder. And it's like, would you like to make the playoff? Go buy a quarterback. Yeah. And we thought Riley Leonard, Dylan Gabriel, and Will Howard was cool. We thought Fernando Mendoza from Cal to Indiana was a big deal. Hey, you want to pay $5 million for Milroe or Ewers? Let me think on that. I'm just saying, right? Oh, is that crazy? Is that crazy now? Are we in crazy talk or are we in new reality talk?
Crazy talk in the sense that I don't know that either one is getting $5 million, but
Carson Beck got 4. Would you have Jalen? Would you rather have Jalen Milroe or Carson Beck?
If you could strap Mario Cristobal to a lie detector and say, hey, both Carson Beck and Jalen Milroe are in the portal, which one do you want? Are we sure he's picking Carson Beck?
I'm pretty sure he's taking Jalen Milroe.
Yeah.
Let's think about second-year quarterbacks. We like this second-year crop. Guys who will be in their second year of college football in 2025 and expected to start.
Yeah.
DJ Lagway at Florida. Dylan Raiola, the second-year starter at Nebraska. Julian Sayin at Ohio State. C.J. Carr at Notre Dame. Damon Williams Jr. at Washington. Drake Lindsay at Minnesota. C.J. Bailey, who also started a decent number of games at NC State last year. Apply this now to them. So I will say one of the things, when you look back at the guys, the third-year guys who have come out, a lot of them started early. Like Jared Goff started from the moment he got to Cal's campus and was a 3-year starter by the time he turned pro. So some of these guys who played earlier, Raiola, Lagway, Bailey, right, they may be more apt to go. Let's think about Sayin. Justin Fields got to Ohio State, was a year at Georgia, played 2 years at Ohio State, and there was no doubt he was going after year 3, right? Any doubt?
No, he said it was a hard decision, but I think he had his mind made up, yeah.
Dwayne Haskins was a 1-year starter at Ohio State, but in his head, I think was on the great Dwayne Haskins was on a 3-year plan from the minute he got there. It was a backup for 2 years, 1 year as a starter, first-round pick. And that was not a surprise to anybody, right? Ryan Day, when Ryan Day at Ohio State would say things like, oh man, it would have been great to have Dwayne Haskins around for a second year as a starter. It was like, yeah, right. Like that was ever going to happen.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be different in this era, do you think?
Yeah, if Dwayne Haskins could have made $3 million to come back and be Ohio State's quarterback in 2019, sure.
CJ
and then
Stroud.
Justin Fields doesn't transfer to Ohio State, and then where's it go from there, right?
Domino, right?
Yeah.
CJ Stroud, 2-year starter, 3 years in college and out at Ohio State's been the norm at Ohio State. So if you look at that and you think, okay, well, they had the McCord thing and that got a little weird. So they brought in Howard, but now they're resetting and Ohio State's quarterback situation is getting back to what it's been. Okay. Julian Sayin, he's in his second year at Ohio State, a first-year starter this year. That's the presumption. He'll be a 2-year starter and then out, and then they'll have Tavian St. Clair behind him and they'll be ready to go. Are you assuming that anymore right now?
No, I'm not assuming that now.
Would you have assumed it 2 years ago?
Yes, I would have assumed it 3 days ago.
We're changing hearts and minds.
Yeah.
Before this show, you would have assumed it.
Yes. I think there's stuff there with like guys like Sayin and Damon Williams. It's like, do you actually have the physical profile to be like a no doubt about it NFL first round pick? And if the answer to that is no, then you're probably maximizing your earning potential in college before you go off to the NFL, even if you are supremely talented, which I think both those guys are. Like on this list of second, like I would say like one of these things is not like the other, and it's DJ Lagway. I think
Agreed.
like DJ Lagway started half a year last year. As long as he's healthy, right? Like, has he thrown a pass yet? If he goes through this next season healthy, I think he probably comes out and he's a first round pick. Sorry, 2 years from now. But aside from that, I don't know that I look at this list and think like, yeah, that guy's definitely gone after his 3 years are up. Maybe Raiola, but I don't think he's nearly there yet.
But I think before, I would have bought before. I don't know what Dylan Raiola is going to be. He certainly has a lot of potential. It feels like I think he's going to make a jump in year 2. I think, again, we've talked about this. We all do this. It's like, hey, this guy's going to be awesome. Oh, he had some struggles as a first-year guy. I'm out on him. It's like, what? You're out on him? He was doing a thing that basically nobody else in the country was doing, which is playing as a first-year college quarterback, which is sort of where people was like, oh, Bryce Underwood, how'd he look in the spring game? He's like, you mean the guy who's been in college for 2 months? He didn't throw for 700 yards in the spring game, so you're out on Bryce Underwood? You're losing your mind. Like, let these guys grow into it a little bit because they're ahead of schedule compared to their class. But I think I would have assumed, okay, Raiola's playing so early, 3 years and out. I'm not assuming that anymore. I'm not assuming that anymore at all.
I'm not assuming that either. Especially for the guys who have like the off the field money making opportunities too. It's not just like what are you going to make from rev share and your collectives to just sort of like be on the team. It's like what can you then earn beyond that? And it's like for guys like Dylan Raiola and DJ Lagway, I mean, dude, you could make like $3 million for your roster spot and another $2 million in endorsements. Like, yeah, it's crazy, right? Like I just don't know. And then if that's the case, then the only way you're matching that if you're an NFL draft pick is if you're drafted in like the first 15 picks or something like that. So
the 23 quarterbacks in the previous 9 years who were third-year quarterbacks who did come out into the draft and were taken, 18 of those 23 were in the first round. So again, like those guys, those certain kind of guys, Christian Hackenberg from Penn State went in the second round. I think he'd be back now in the modern era. Deshaun Kaiser from Notre Dame went in the second round. I think he'd stay in the modern era. Brad Kaya from Miami. I can remember being like on the Brad Kaya Heisman train before season 1 year. It was like, that didn't work. He was a starter as a true freshman, was just in a hurry, got out of there. He was a 6th round pick. Jake Fromm, Georgia, was a 5th round pick, also took over as a true freshman starter. I think affected that. And then Sam Howell from North Carolina was a 5th round pick. But I think the point here even is you're a first round pick. That's great. Sam Darnold, super young at USC, 3rd pick in the draft. The way we've seen his career progress, I think he clearly would have been helped by A, not going to the New York Jets, but B, having another year in college. And if you gather up the Hollywood folks and USC, be like, this guy's awesome. Let's keep him here. Sam, the NFL's not going anywhere. Stay. Here's your money. I could see it. I could see the next Sam Darnold, even though he was the 3rd pick in the draft, staying another year.
Yeah, especially because of his age. Yeah, and I don't know the age of a lot. Like I don't know who's young for their grade and who's not among this group of second-year guys, or even like thinking about future classes. But yeah, if you're looking at potentially going into the NFL when you're like 21 or 22, I could definitely see the circumstances adding up to you like wanting to stay and go when you're 23 or 24. Because to your point, it does seem like the NFL. I guess the NFL values that more, right? I suppose it could just be a case of like that maybe they don't really value it more. It's just sort of what's available to them. But I do think there's truth to the fact that the NFL values that age and experience a little more than it has in the past. Because if it did, like the fact that like again, like Tyler Shuck's age would have been used against him.
Yes,
like three years ago, right? And it didn't seem to matter much that he's whatever he is, 20, 25, or 26.
When the Browns drafted Brandon Weeden out of Oklahoma State when he was like 25, people were like making jokes about whether he needed, a walker to come to his press conference. Yeah. And now people would be like, yes, that guy. Give me more of that super veteran dude.
Hendon Hooker, too, was really old. And had he not been injured, he would have been a first-round pick, I think.
Yeah.
And he was like 25, I think, when he got drafted.
Anthony Richardson from Florida came out as a 3rd-year guy, was a top 10 pick. I mean, you're making the Lagway. I mean, same school. Can you make a case to Anthony Richardson? Like, you don't have to be in a hurry. We got you. I don't know. Again, like you look now. And
I think it's tough. I think it's tough with anyone who's going to be first half of the first round.
I agree, but I also wonder, and there are certainly enough examples of guys who hit. C.J. Stroud was ready. Trevor Lawrence was pretty ready. Lamar Jackson was super ready, right? But there are also enough examples of like, man, that Patrick Mahomes was ready, by the way. Deshaun Watson was ready. I think for certain other guys though, right? Even though you were a first round pick, did it max out your life as a quarterback? Zach Wilson,
I was just going to say
3 years and out at BYU, right? Again, not helped by going to the Jets, but could you spin it? And it's not even spin, but could you make a presentation as the school where he is to say, listen, man, we got you. Here's why you should stay. Or could the agent and the family say, you know what, we're going to go maybe to another school that we think even has more talent and is going to develop him even better as a quarterback, but we're going to take a post-grad year before we go to the NFL. And we're going to make a boatload of money, but all is good about this. I even wonder about J.J. McCarthy. If this was 1 year later, and we can't judge J.J. McCarthy because unfortunately he got hurt right when he got to the NFL and didn't play last year. But did J.J. McCarthy have to be at it? Maybe he did. I mean, his whole coaching staff left, and there were so many important guys. But also, like, he could have hung out with Colson Loveland and Will Johnson and Mason Graham and some of those other stars of that national championship team that were young and couldn't go. I don't know. I'm not saying J.J. McCarthy made a bad decision, but all of a sudden, it seems more possible to me that he could have stayed for a fourth year at Michigan.
Yeah, I would say a little less on a guy like McCarthy because sometimes one the draft position is enticing, and two, the timing sort of made sense. Zach Wilson's like a fascinating study because like that was a weird draft class that was evaluated differently than any other draft class, and like BYU just paid out the wazoo for the number 2 basketball player. It's like they have the money to pay Zach Wilson to stay around a couple years.
Yeah,
he'd be the most important person in Utah if he stayed around at BYU for another year. So yeah, there are a lot. I think there are quite a few, even high end draft picks you could revisit and talk yourself into the idea that them staying would have been a realistic possibility if they existed in our current landscape.
Yeah. All right. 3 other quick conclusions we want to draw here about the changing marketplace of college football. You zeroed in on this one. It's the death of the mid-tier draft pick for quarterbacks. And your conclusion is you're either going to go early in the draft or you're going to go like in the 6th or 7th round, and how you think that maybe could affect how some guys think about this. What's the data? What's the information you found here?
Yeah, I looked at the 10 drafts prior to these last two. So we have 24-25, then I had 2014 to 2023. Okay. In that 2014 to 2023 window, the average number of quarterbacks taken in rounds 3 through 5 was 4.5. And there have been 5 total the last 2 years. 3 in this most recent draft and 2 last year. Last year was a little weirder because it was like I don't believe there was anybody taking in like the 3rd, 4th, or 5th
there
round.
Were 6 guys in the first round, and then Spencer Rattler in round 5 was the next
in round 5, right? So that was weird. But then like this draft kind of followed suit and was helped by the Browns, I think, and everybody agreeing reaching for Dylan Gabriel when they did. So that was interesting to me. I don't know. Again, maybe that is just specific to these last 2 quarterback classes, and it will trend back toward what has been the average moving forward. But I thought 4.5 per year on average for the 10 years prior to 2024, and then only 5 total over the last 2 years was perhaps an indication that the NFL says we'll take you early or we'll take you late, and there's nothing in between.
Yes.
And if that's the case, why would you come out if you had eligibility left if you weren't 100% certain you were a first round pick? Yeah. And then the other part of that was like looking at I think sort of go hand in hand. This was a little less stark, I think, but in that same window, 2014 to 2023, the average number of quarterbacks taken in rounds 6 and 7 was 3.1. And we just saw 7 go in those 2 rounds in this draft. So it's 10 total over the last 2 years, but the 3 in 2024 is actually sort of on par with what the trend has been. 7 in those 2 rounds is like a major outlier if you look across the 10 years prior to 2024. So again, is that draft class specific or is that a sign of a shift? I'm not entirely sure, but it certainly jumped out to me that teams loaded up on quarterbacks late when they typically hadn't done that prior to the last 2 years.
I mean, this is an eligibility conversation that quarterbacks and agents and families have to have now. They have to look at things like this and understand the reality of the situation, which leads to my next thing, which is the thing I've been talking about, which is this post-grad year. That I don't believe there's anybody taking in like the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round. Or 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 3rd, 4th, or 5th round you're ready to move on, but moving on is not the NFL. And that we've already seen it, but we're going to see it even more if Milroe and Ewers had done it. What if, for instance, at Ohio State, Julian Sayin is a second-year player right now. Tavian St. Clair, who's a five-star quarterback, is a first-year player. This is the Ewers Arch Manning model. Mm-hmm. What if Sayin is a very good quarterback for the next 2 years, but Tavian St. Clair is ready to play? He waits 2 years, just like Arch, and he's ready to play. And Ohio State is ready to play him. And Julian Sayin has been excellent, but just athletically right size. Tavian St. Clair is a different kind of quarterback, and Ryan Day thinks we got to get to this guy. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine? But if Julian Sayin is good and is everything that we think he might be, Julian Sayin on the market after 2 years as a starting quarterback at Ohio State, and not because, and again, this is very similar to Avery Johnson kind of making Will Howard expendable for Kansas State, Jackson Arnold making Dylan Gabriel expendable for Oklahoma, but it's amped up. And I think
it's higher profile.
It's higher profile. And again, I think this can become, because coaches still want to stack quarterbacks and they still want to build a room. And if before, as much as like Ryan Day didn't he wished Dwayne Haskins stayed, he was ready to go get Justin Fields immediately as soon as Dwayne Haskins left, right? So you still have to plan for the future, but the future, I just think, could include many more 1 year post-grad, ready to play. My old school is ready to move to the next guy, but I'm not going to go to the NFL yet. I just think this tier of guys, holy moly, we could be opening ourselves up for just a new standard of 1 year QB transfers, even beyond where we are now. And where we are now is so different than 5 years ago, but I think it could jump.
I think it could jump too. And Ohio State is, I think, maybe uniquely positioned because it has been touting a version of this ever since Joe Burrow left. Mm-hmm. It's not exactly the same thing, but like, I don't, which is just to say, like, if it got to that point, I don't think Ohio State would be uncomfortable, like even leaning into that kind of development plan. It's like, we develop you for the NFL. We also like develop you to go get paid $3 million from somebody else if it works out that way too.
Right.
That'd be a pretty compelling sales pitch to me if I was a young quarterback looking at a place like Ohio State. So I do think you'll see this more. Yeah. I just, again, part of me is like hesitant to like take this 2 year window and kind of run with it, but I really do think, and I know you think too, like there really is something here, right? I know. I don't necessarily think that we should be, unless the economics of college football are just going to change so drastically that it doesn't make sense to stay. But short of that, I think this is where we're headed. So I think we'll see more Will Howards, more Kyle McCords, more whoever Curtis Works. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Moving,
but even
whether those are sideways moves or up transfers, whatever it is, like even if it might make sense for you to go to the NFL from the standpoint of like you'll get picked, why would you waste the year of earning potential?
Yeah,
do you have available to you in college?
And then my last piece of this is now redshirt years are gold.
This is where I have changed the most in my, like what I was referencing earlier.
So
it used to infuriate me when teams are redshirt really good young quarterbacks.
Yes. Because what are you doing? Because if they're going to be good, they're going to leave anyway. Mm-hmm. How much money did Ohio State cost Kyle McCord by dorking around and playing him his first year at Ohio State? And he tried to get a waiver at Syracuse and didn't get it. So he went into the draft. But if he was still at Syracuse right now, and I don't think he would have done this, but if he had gone back on the market again, if he had that year of eligibility, so you can now play, right? You're going to be able to play 30% of games and still redshirt. I think like that's shifting a little bit. And then there continues to be this discussion of, will we just completely change eligibility in college sports? Could it be that you just get 5 years? It's 5 years max, but you could just play all 5 if you want. You don't have to redshirt, but then there's no waivers. There's no, you can't get a 6th, you can't get a 7th. Every story that comes up, I don't like the lawsuits right now. I need an extra year because every time you grant an extra year for somebody, that's a year of playing time you're taking away from somebody else, from some younger person who is no longer going to play. There's a finite amount of snaps in college football. And so if you're letting, it's like people think it's hilarious to have 9th-year college football players. I think it's stupid. And then I think it's an insult to the game. And I think you're putting one person above the good of the sport, because those are snaps that somebody else who is of actual college age is not getting. But we don't know how these eligibility rules might shift. But man, if you are a young quarterback and there still is a redshirt factor here, you have to protect your eligibility with your life, because that difference of whether you in year 5 you can play or you're out of eligibility, it could be millions of dollars that it might be your last chance to ever get it, because you're not a 1st-round pick, you're a 7th-round pick or a 6th-round pick or an undrafted free agent, and you just caught yourselves $2.5 million because your team played you 5 games instead of 4.
Yeah, like I don't think that Kyle McCord should have gotten an extra year, but I think someone should have thought a little harder in 2021, whether it was Ohio State or like the quarterback, the player, and like his camp holds some responsibility here too. Of like, did you have to play the 10 snaps against Indiana in the game that Ohio State won 54-7? I don't think so. At the time, I probably didn't think anything of it. Again, I've changed my mind on this, but like, yeah, Kyle McCord ends up being a 6th-round pick, and maybe he'll stick with the Eagles and have a nice career as a backup. But he certainly would have made more money next year being Syracuse's quarterback than he's going to make in the NFL. And one extra game that he played in 2021 kind of screwed him over. Or I guess you could have made it up in 2022 when he was still the backup, and I think he played like 7 games in that season. So there was a 2-year window where they could have just decided you're only going to play 4 games this year, and he could have preserved that extra year. But didn't seem like anyone was particularly interested at the time. And to give them, I guess, a little bit of grace, like they didn't know what was coming. Like if you would have said like, hey, this is what the world's going to look like 3 years from now, they would have said, oh yeah, okay, well, we won't play against Indiana. I think they would have come to that conclusion.
Yeah. So a lot's changing. We just want you to think about your quarterback situation with your own team, and maybe just be aware of the shift that is.
Can I ask you a question about the redshirt thing? Because there were 2 guys that you ran through the guys from the 2022 class. The two big ones were Cade Klubnik and Drew Aller, who are out of eligibility after this year. They're 4th-year guys, but they can't play beyond this year because both of them played 10 games as true freshman backups in 2022. Do you think, with the benefit of hindsight, either one of those programs, Clemson or Penn State, would have done that, knowing the situation we're in now?
See, because the situation is, I don't think it's a program conversation, because if you are a really good program, is a 4th year for a starting quarterback for a guy who is going to be a mid to late round draft pick really what your program needs? This is like,
I would say at Penn State, probably. It's not like Penn State has some robust history of turning out 1st-round quarterbacks.
Yeah, I guess so. But also they might be ready to be like, Ethan Grunkemeyer has to play. He's ready to play, and he's not going to sit 3 years. We have to be ready to play him in year 3. And I don't know the Clemson quarterback situation, but like if you are a program that is preparing, I think it's much more about the quarterback, because I don't know the idea that not only could Clemson and Penn State have Cade Klubnik and Drew Aller for 2025, they could also have them for 2026. I'm not sure if that's devastating for those 2 programs that they played those guys as freshmen. I'm wondering how much money it might have cost those 2 guys if they're not 1st-round picks.
Yeah,
so
that's probably the better way to view it. Yeah.
That I think it's more of a quarterback thing, because again, let's just say James Franklin's like, Ethan Grunkemeyer is the guy. And now Drew Aller is available. And now, whatever. The Michigan State collective is like, okay, let's do this, right? That kind of thing. So the Cincinnati collective is like, what are we doing? Let's get Drew Aller. That's where I think it becomes a factor.
So is it now the official stance of the KOTN quarterback advisory board that you must redshirt? Unless you're going to start as a true freshman.
You got to start a redshirt.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure, should redshirting be a game conversation or should it be a snaps conversation? Is it a percent? Should it be a percent of games played, or should it be a percent of snaps played, or in any other sport, a percent of time played? Right?
It's hard.
So,
Yeah, I think snap base makes more sense to me, but then like it's a moving target, and you don't know until the end of the year what threshold you need to be under. But if it was like all freshmen should be allowed to play 200 snaps without exhausting their eligibility,
or be able to play 25% of their team snaps.
and then postseason play, which already doesn't count against it, wouldn't count against it still. Yeah.
So I don't know, but I always poo-pooed redshirting because I really thought of redshirting as either you're so good that your team would want you, but you're leaving anyway. You're not leaving all the eligibility, or you have eligibility left, but if you're not ready to go to the NFL by that point, is your team like so super excited to have you around for the 5th year? Like, oh, I guess like we have a bunch of other guys here who we think could probably do it, maybe have more upside, but my mind is completely changed on that. So.
Yeah, me too.
All right. You want to talk about Tyler Shuck a little bit more? We got a Tyler Shuck chart. Shuck chart.
Great. Did you hear what who's the guy who's the New York sports radio guy? Mike Francesa?
Yeah.
Was talking about Tyler Shuck, and he kept calling him Tyler Sluck. Tyler Sluck.
There, but for the grace of God. I mean, like someday, the things that I eventually will say on this show, if we are lucky enough to stick around forever, I will say in my house, you saw the thing where Shaq had to leave the set like last week. Yeah. We were singing a new song that we called Shaq Start. We were singing that to Love Shack. There's 15 miles to the shack. Okay. When we come back, we have a Tyler Shuck chart. Now I'm on the edge of getting myself in trouble.
Yeah.
Now that you've planted that in my head. We'll do it next on KOTN. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis back on KOTN. Send us questions, comments to ask KOTN@gmail.com. Saw we had some in there. Going to grab some for a future show. I do want to ask this question specifically that I would like people to send in comments and answers about. I think we're going to do a future show, maybe next week, about your perfect quarterback for your team. And it is not what it would look like, but it is, have you had him? Has your program had a quarterback that no matter who comes in now, it would be very difficult for anybody to become the best quarterback in your program's history because somebody's kind of got it locked down? Mm-hmm. Or do you feel like there is very much that title is open? And if so, do you think maybe the guy who is on your roster right now has a chance to be that? But we are going to draw some conclusions, I think, Bill, about who we think perfect quarterbacks have been for programs. Dan Marino at Pitt. Mm-hmm. Steve Young at BYU. Donovan McNabb at Syracuse.
Go Birds.
I've done some of the work on this stuff, right? So I have some Otto Graham at Northwestern. He's like, I don't know about this guy, Preston Stone. Watch out, Otto Graham, right? And then like what it goes into that. Is it winning? Is it aura? Is it just like the big plays the guy made, the way you talk about him, the things he's gone on to do in the NFL? We want to try to find who are the perfect quarterbacks, who have been the perfect quarterbacks for our 28 Northern teams. Which schools are still looking for him? And I think it might surprise you, some of the ones that we might think are still looking for him. But we want your comments.
I can think
perfect
of one
quarterbacks have you
pretty
had
high
them.
profile one that I'm not sure has an answer to that question.
Yeah. So we'll do that. We'll do that. But let's talk. Oh, with Tyler Shuck graphic, I had sent producer Mike the big long stuff about like all the guys who are 13. And actually, originally, this is how bad I am at this. I left Tyler Shuck off this graphic originally.
Was there an age cutoff? There must have been. Yeah.
There was an age cutoff. Yeah. It was like it's like renting a car. It was like he's old enough to rent a car. He's not on the quarterback list. There were 13 guys who were drafted. Here's the thing that I want us to like realize with this. Look at this. God, look at this. Isn't it beautiful?
It's great.
Producer Mike, jump in. Is this like you have all 13 guys, but like 3 or 4 at a time here?
Yes, we go 4-4-3-2.
Look at this. Bill, look at this. Look at Jackson Dart wearing a headband. If you're listening on the podcast and not watching on YouTube, you are missing Jackson Dart in a headband with glorious hair in front of the Ole Miss logo. Can you imagine, Bill, missing that?
I mean, yes, but it's nice. It's nice for people to see. Yeah.
Okay. So let me run through this for the people who are not watching. Cam Ward, 5 years in college, played at 3 schools, was a 0-star recruit. Jackson Dart at Ole Miss, 4 years experience, played at 2 schools because he started at USC, was a 4-star recruit. Tyler Shuck, Louisville, 6 years in college, played at 3 schools, was a 4-star recruit. Oregon to Texas Tech to Louisville. Jalen Milroe, 4 years in college, 1 school, was a 4-star recruit. Dylan Gabriel at Oregon, 6 years in college, 3 schools, UCF to Oklahoma to Oregon, was a 3-star recruit. Shedeur Sanders, 4 years in school, 2 colleges, Jackson State, Colorado, 4-star recruit. Kyle McCord, 4 years in school, 2 schools, Ohio State, Syracuse, 5-star recruit. Will Howard, 5 years in school, 2 schools, Kansas State, Ohio State, 3-star recruit coming out of Downingtown. How about this? I spent a lot of time talking about this one guy once upon a time. But first, it's Riley Leonard, 4 years experience in college, 2 schools, Duke and Notre Dame, 3-star recruit. Graham Mertz, Landis. You feeling Graham Mertz right now? You got the Graham Mertz tingles?
I forgot about Graham Mertz until I saw his name flash across the bottom screen watching the draft.
I on a previous show, once upon a time, I think did a whole show based on the idea when he was at Wisconsin. What if Graham Mertz is good?
I guess we'll never know.
He got drafted, 6 years experience, 2 schools, Wisconsin and Florida, was a 4-star recruit, was a huge recruit when he went to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Cam Miller, North Dakota State, 5 years in college. That's the only school he played for, was a 0-star recruit. Last 2, God, I love this graphic. Curtis Rourke, Indiana, 6 years in college, 2 schools, Ohio and Indiana, 3-star recruit. Quinn Ewers, 4 years in college, 2 schools, Ohio State and Texas, was a 5-star recruit. Here's the thing, Landis. Just 2 of the guys who were drafted, 2 of the 13 guys who were drafted in this quarterback class played at the same school their whole career. There were more guys who played at 3 schools than there were who played at 1. And there were no third-year guys, but there were 4 sixth-year guys. So this is what we are talking about. Again, we didn't have like a whole COVID year conversation. We're kind of out of that. So I think we are kind of at the end of the 6th-year guys. I guess if you were a freshman in 2020, you still could be a 6th-year guy in 2025, right?
You could be. I was actually looking at that because Will Howard played in 2020, doesn't count. And I think played 6 games in 2021 because Skylar Thompson got hurt. But if he hadn't done that, Will Howard could have come back to college for one more year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know this is one of these things again. I know our audience knows this, but also, holy moly, more 6th-year guys than 3rd-year guys, more guys with 3 schools than 1 school. This is the state of our sport. I'm not. There's no value
and only
judgment
one
on
5-star prospect. Was that right? Only one 5-star prospect among that group?
I mean, 2. Kyle McCord and Quinn Ewers.
Oh, McCord and Quinn Ewers. Yeah. Okay.
Both of whom started at Ohio State and did not finish at Ohio State as 5-star prospects. So again, like the straight line. I'm Bryce Young. I'm a 5-star prospect. I go to Alabama. I'm a backup as a freshman. I played 2 years and I'm the first pick in the draft. I'm not saying that will never happen again. I am saying this draft, where the number one pick is a guy who started his career at Incarnate Word, is as far from the Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud as the top 2 picks draft as you can get.
Aside from that guy, the Bryce Young, the C.J. Stroud, Dylan Gabriel has the ideal modern quarterback career. Bounce around, get paid, elevate yourself every time you move, and then hope that someone drafts you higher than you should be drafted. Yeah. That's it. That's the blueprint for most college quarterbacks. Not the cream of the crop, but most other college quarterbacks.
I made Mike did a great job making that graphic. It was just to I want all this to soak in for people, Landis. Isn't this crazy?
Mm-hmm.
There's 4 sixth-year quarterbacks and 0 third-year quarterbacks were drafted this year.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
3 guys who were at 3 schools, and the 2 guys who stayed at 1 school were the Alabama guy, who we are now saying actually probably should have transferred somewhere else this year, and the North Dakota State guy. It's like, hey, who really keeps their quarterbacks around? Let me tell you. 2 places that just know how to do quarterback right. Bama and North Dakota State. And by the way, not joking about North Dakota State at all. Like, they got something going on there, right? So, like, they know what they're doing.
But they also, like, I don't think, have we seen, we just saw Mark Gronowski leave South Dakota State to do I don't think we've seen through, like, Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, Easton Stick, Cam Miller, like the good North Dakota State quarterback do that yet, right? But I'm sure we're entering that territory.
Can we add that in the things that our audience should learn about? A year from now, if the North Dakota State quarterback transfers to a power conference school, bet that team to make the playoff. And for that guy to get drafted. Okay. Yeah. Feel free to screenshot that and print that out and laminate it and put it on your person, because that's a cocktail party discussion right there. Did you know there were more quarterbacks who played at 3 schools than at 1 school taken in the 2020 NFL draft? Okay. How's the North doing at producing quarterbacks? This is why I get mad. We get mad when people are talking about who the best quarterbacks in 2025 are going to be, and there's not Northern guys on this list, which we did 2 weeks ago. We were appropriately mad about that.
Mm-hmm.
In the draft, 13 quarterbacks taken, 7 from the North, 5 from the South, 1 border. What do you think of that?
I love it. It's great. I hope it happens more.
59 quarterbacks started at least 1 game in the NFL last year. The breakdown. That's what I spent my Sunday doing. South, 27. I have the lines are so firmly drawn for me in college football, North, South, and border. I can look at any list of 149 names and I just go North, South, border. North, South, border, North, South, border. And what I actually do is I usually, like, North is first, South is second, border's third. So I'm just going 1 0 0 2 0 0 2 1 0 36 14 9 36 15 9, and I just do that through a whole list of names. I am like Rain Man. I'm the Rain Man of Northern football, which also
with the least applicable skill in the world. No benefit.
Doug,
unique skill.
There's a player from Nevada. What's Nevada? Border. Boom. Nailed it. 59 quarterbacks started at least a game. South, 27. North, 23. Border, 9. Pretty close, right? This is just one of these things. We don't always remind you that the North kicks the South's butt. Sometimes we remind you that the North is closer to the South than you think. So this is which is also worthwhile.
Yeah, there are a lot of things, like, throughout doing the show that you mostly have unearthed where it's like, that's closer than I thought it would be. And this is one of them. Yeah.
Total starts at quarterback last year in the NFL. South 254, North 192, border 98. The border still rises up in the NFL quarterback situation because there's still USC and Cal guys like Jared Goff and Aaron Rodgers being from Cal, and like USC guys, Caleb Williams and Sam Darnold, like being functional NFL quarterbacks really matters to this. Mm-hmm. So anyway, there's a little bit of a gap there. And then just like a projection that I think most people would agree on, projected starting quarterbacks in the NFL next year, South 14, North 12, border 6. So again, just like if you look at things, and again, that's like Cam Ward came through the North. He's going to be a starting quarterback. Joe Burrow came through the North. He's going to be a starting quarterback. And again, I'm going to do that on a future show too, just so people know that. Is that okay? Is that information that we can provide? All right. How'd the draft go overall? You want to do this?
Yep.
The draft overall, 7 rounds. Did you watch most of the draft, and did you watch it through the eyes of the North-South breakdown constantly?
Mostly just the first round. I did that. I stopped tallying things up in the second round.
Yeah. I never stopped. And I will tell you that the North lost each of the first 5 rounds. And then the North rallied like the champions that they are and dominated the 6th and 7th rounds. So,
that's right.
The first round was exactly what it wasn't the exact players, but it was the exact breakdown that every single draft analyst that we cited before the draft said it would be, which was 18 South, 14 North. So that was pretty close. Second round didn't go great. 18 South, 11 North, 3 border did not go great. And so that gap of 36, 25 to 3 with the South edge for the first 2 rounds is not great. Because
I feel like
years ago,
Ohio State ruined it. Ohio State ruined it because Ohio State had guys who were banking on going to the second round to make that closer, who then went in the first round. And then I think,
that's true.
And then the guys from the North we thought were going to go in the first round, like didn't go to like the third round.
Yeah, no, for real. Like, Shedeur Sanders was like one tiny part of this, but like that, we have to admit that was not a great top of the draft. Third round, 18 South, 17 North, 3 border, closer. Fourth round, domination by the South. 20 South, 9 North, 7 border. Just killed in the 4th round. We got to work on that. 5th round, 20 South, 17 North, 1 border. And then here comes the run. And I was doing this. I was doing this live on Twitter, doing this thing. I was like, look at that beautiful run of 5 straight Northern guys in the 6th round. My heart is full. Full draft, full hearts. 22 North, 13 South, 5 border in the 6th round. 21 North, 15 South, 5 border in the 7th round. Who owns the back of the draft? The North. Overall, 257 players overall. 122 for the South, 111 for the North, 24 for the border. And here's the point that I want to make with all these numbers. And I beat you guys over the head with these numbers, and I apologize at times. I do not want this show to feel like homework, but I am just continually trying to make the point that it is closer than you think. In 2025, okay, the final percent here is this draft is 47.5% South, 43.2% North, 9.3% border. Okay. The draft 10 years earlier in 2015 was 51.2% South, 35.9% North, 12.9% border. So in the course of 10 years, the North is 19 players up from the 2015 draft. That's an increase of 7.3%. The South is 9 players down. That's a decrease of 3.7%. And the border is 9 players down. That's a decrease of 3.6%. That's what we're talking about. Did the South have more players drafted than the North? Yes. Did the South have a lot more players drafted than the North at the top of the draft? Yes. Is the North getting closer? Undoubtedly. It's a 7.3% increase. So that's where we're coming from. And you're only going to hear anybody else, because nobody else couches it this way, of Big Ten SEC. SEC was 79, most ever. Big Ten was 71, also most ever. That's not only what it's about here. And I have information. We'll talk about that in the summer, some of this stuff, because I have some other things here. There are more theories about that we're going to apply to what it means for college football. Landis, 7.3% in a decade. That increase for the North, I'll take it.
I'll take it. It's very good. Yeah. And I think this to me is a far more interesting context, I think, to try to absorb all this information. Because even like, again, not to go too far down the road, like the Big Ten SEC draft talk conversation doesn't seem to be starting with, and frankly, even sometimes not even acknowledging the fact that they're working from larger player pools to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas like what we define as North and South has not changed over this period of time. So the fact that is increased without the player pool drastically being altered is quite impressive. Yeah. And like, again, I think we mentioned this last time we last episode. It's like you have to factor in. It's not just the South lowering, although it did. It's the border kind of falling off a little bit, and the North, taking up a lot of that space. But that's great. I think that's sort of the point we're trying to make, is that there's a void and the North is filling it, or there was a void left and the North that has done a nice job of filling it in this area.
Because that would not, if we were talking about, hey, everybody in California football has fallen off, both on the field and in talent production. And the result is the SEC sucked up all those guys. That would not be a surprising result if that were the case.
Nope.
The border's down, but the South is up because of it. But that's not the case. That the border is down, and clearly what the North has done is the North is developing its own guys better. It's also taken some from the border, winning a few more battles with the South, and here we are. And it's a 7% increase. I don't know. I don't know much about stocks. Is a 7% increase actually probably not that great in a decade? If you're like, oh man, I have been crushing it for the last decade. 7% increase. Is that what people would say, or no? Maybe not.
I don't know. I think I ask Ari that question. He's more of a stock market expert than I am.
All of Ari's stock market stuff is in football cards, though. The football cards are not the stock market, are they?
It operates like one, unfortunately.
That's true. We have to get Ari back on. Let's do this. Final draft thoughts, because there are some position group things that we want to talk about that I know when we discussed this, you were surprised. Were you not? Were you not surprised?
There was one position, that I was very surprised by.
Okay. We'll run through that, and two schools in particular that the draft told us something about, two of our northern schools. That's all next on Kings of the North. Doug and Bill back on KOTN. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, send a question or comment to askkotn@gmail.com. Again, we're asking you specifically about, has your school had its perfect quarterback yet? You can also opine about other schools, just not Southern schools, 28 Northern schools. Have you had a perfect quarterback? But also any other comments, any other suggestions, any other questions you would like us to answer on the show. We'll take all of that at the mailbag. Where the NFL won position group battles in this 25 NFL draft. The North had more quarterbacks taken, Bill. And just like, if you would have guessed, I mean, we did a lot on quarterbacks. Is that a surprise? Not a surprise? What did you think that the North had more quarterbacks than the South?
I mean, I surveyed enough of what was happening leading up to the draft to not be surprised by that. No.
Okay.
So it wasn't shocking to me.
What do you think of the fact that the North won wide receivers? 15 North, 13 South, 3 border. How'd that hit you?
That's the one that surprised me the most. Even if it's not like a huge gulf, right, between it's just two more. That the North at, like, you want to call it the ultimate skill position, bested the South in a year where Ohio State only had one receiver drafted. Kind of blows my mind.
So let's keep an eye on this, because this, again, I realized after the fact that we used myth in 2 separate headlines in the last 2 weeks, because I just was really feeling it about the SEC being a bunch of, not frauds, but more the perception being fraudulent, about like of their dominance. But this myth of like SEC speed, I mean, there's just some things here that are, I think if you asked anybody in college football, hey, there were 31 receivers drafted, what do you think the North-South border breakdown was? And then the first thing they would say is Arizona border of the South? And then also, what are you doing? And what is the latitude? But who won, North or South? Would anybody say the North?
No.
We're just saying. We're monitoring. Tight ends. 10 North, 5 South, 1 border. And this was the culmination, the blooming of our tight end talk all last year, when we were preseason talking about like best tight ends in the North. And we just thought to ourselves, can we put 7 Northern tight ends on the first team, because how do you pick between Penn State's Ty Warren and Michigan's Colston Loveland and Oregon's Terrence Ferguson and Pitt's Gavin Bartholomew and Syracuse's Orlando Gadsden and all these guys, and they all got picked, man.
It feels like a future show, because I think last year you would like the positions where the North is the strongest. You would have said tight end, probably your running back. Looking ahead to next season, where do we think the North will be the strongest?
Strongest. Okay. Strongest positions. And the last one where they won, offensive tackle. And this is by ESPN's definition of offensive tackles, for instance, which was based on, I think, how the teams drafted them and couched them. Wyatt Milam, great tackle at West Virginia, 3rd round pick, drafted as a guard. So he goes on this list as a guard instead of a tackle. But the tackles, as defined by the draft itself, 14-10 North. What did you think of that?
I love to see it. I maybe would have, I perhaps would have assumed it, or at least picked it to be closer at the offensive line position, than like at receiver. But to see like one of the better Northern tackles be classified as a guard, and then for the North to still win this was a little surprising.
And also, by the way, in conclusion, offense, North 62, South 55, border 9. So the North won offense pretty convincingly. I will say they lost special teams, which again is just a separate offseason show. No Northern special teamers drafted. Ben Sauls from Pitt, the kicker, probably should have been picked. He wasn't. 4 Southern guys picked, 2 kickers, a punter, and a long snapper. How a Vanderbilt long snapper gets picked and no Northern long snapper gets picked is Bill Landis' week-long investigation, is it not?
We're diving. Yeah, we have our best men on it. We're trying to figure it out.
And then defensively, it was pretty overwhelming for the South. The South was 63 on defense. The North was 49 and the border was 15. And that means that the South won running back and interior offensive line, which is guards and centers, but they won edge defenders, linebackers, cornerbacks, and safeties. Defensive tackles was a tie, which surprised me because in the past, in my 20 years of covering Northern college football, I maybe would have said, man, this is interesting. I think I would have said, where are the 2 positions where the North can't hang with the South? I think I would have said wide receiver and defensive tackle, because the South seemed to have those dancing bear, athletic, quick, giant guys. And here we are. And the North won receiver and tied defensive tackle. But the thing that stood out to me, Landis, is the run and chase guys go get the ball. Edge defenders, linebackers, safeties, the South had more.
Yeah, that feels like where the gap is still pretty stark in terms of talent accumulation between the North and the South. And the North has to do a better job of closing the gap on. I mean, like, you know, it's not like they're hurting for it. Abdul Carter was a top 5 pick, and Ohio State has generated its share of defensive ends. But I would say that, yeah, the majority of the high-level athletes at those positions still find themselves going to Southern programs, and that'll be a hard hurdle, I think, for the North to overcome, frankly, because a lot of those guys, recruiting-wise, tend to be down on the South.
Edge, 15 South, 9 North, 3 border. Makes me want to investigate edge defenders and outside linebackers. Right, linebackers 12 South, 7 North, 3 border. So we can do. And again,
I also wonder if there's a stylistic component to that. Like, are there more? I would venture to say that there are more like 3-4 kind of defenses in the South than there are in the North.
That sounds like a new project.
More guys like that.
That I want you to get to the point where you can look at a college football team and know if they're 3-4, they're 4-3, they're multiple, like whatever. Just like go down a list. Could you do it right now? Let's go. Ready. Wake Forest.
4 down. No idea. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll work on that again. We have plenty of things to do this offseason. We just added that to your list.
That was a good team to pull out.
They're my go-to. Not a lot of college football conversations about Wake Forest's front, or their back. Other draft notes. Let's show our guys who got picked. Teams with the most picks in the North: Ohio State 14, Oregon 10, Michigan 7, Notre Dame and Maryland 6 each. And I always ask you this again: are you impressed when teams have a lot of picks, or when a team like Maryland has 6 picks after a very bad year? Are you more Mike Loxley, what are you doing? Also, shout out to our guy, Ruben Hippolyte, who was a great interview at Big Ten Media Days last year, one of the best guys we had on, and was like a surprising pick at linebacker. Great opportunity for him. But dude, Maryland won one Big Ten game last year in overtime, and they had 6 draft picks.
It is my consistent frustration with Maryland that they continue to have athletes and can't field a team for some reason.
Yeah. That is worth more of an investigation. It's one of those, again, where we're talking about that Maryland in this next recruiting class might get 2 5-star guys, but you got to win with them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not there just to produce NFL players. Fans don't show up on Saturday and just look at each other and say, like, man, remember how we had 6 guys drafted last year when we were 1-8 in the Big Ten? You don't wear shirts that say like 6 guys drafted. So, but then also, is it not okay? Because like both their receivers were picked, right? Ty Felton and Caden Prather. It's like, okay, man, like they can get guys. Man, what if Malik Washington is really the guy as a young quarterback? Or what if Justin Martin's ready right now and they can really make some smart portal things? Like, there's a frustration around something like this with Maryland, but does it also make you think, man, if it ever hits, they're a sleeping giant?
Yeah, there's the frustration is coupled with like the consistent belief that they're always like a piece or 2 away too, because of what they're able to. Yeah, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword there.
Yeah. So again, Michigan 13 drafted last year, 7 this year, so 20 guys drafted off the heart of that national championship team. Ohio State 14. We thought it would be 15. It felt like we had said on the show, they're locked in at 15. They're not going to have 14. They're not going to have 16. And then 15 would have tied the record for most draft picks by any college, except by Georgia. Instead, Ohio State fell 1 short of that. It's because only 3 centers got drafted, and Seth McLaughlin, who was their 1-year transfer from Alabama, won the Remington Award as the best center in the country, got hurt during the year. Maybe the injury affected it. I don't know, but it's also a reminder, often like not a ton of centers get picked.
I was surprised to see there were only 3. I think it was the injury, because it wasn't even an injury that Seth McLaughlin could come back from and like work out for teams. So, or at least to the extent that he wanted to. So yeah, if he were healthy, he would have been drafted, I think is the simplest way to say it. So
that's unfortunate. Best of luck to him. Oregon program record with 10 picks, which again, as we sit here at the end of April, could be a sign of like officially Oregon is at the top tier of the sport. I think they already are. Oregon's a monster. They're going to win a national championship. Dan Lanning knows what he's doing. Also, maybe be on a little bit of an alert for a slight step back because they lost a lot of talent. They just lost the most guys to the NFL draft they ever lost. And if you're not quite Georgia and Ohio State yet, that could be hard. I think we've kind of established we're maybe on alert a little bit for Oregon, but 10 draft picks is awesome.
10 draft picks is great, but yeah, there's the next step of that. What you're laying out there, it's like you have to prove an ability to continue on when you lose double-digit players to the NFL, like the Ohio States, Alabamas, and Georgias do routinely.
Yes. So these are the teams that had the most in the North. And listen, there's a bunch of other guys drafted in the South, and it's one of those, again, when you just go through like team by team. Ohio State had the most with 14, Georgia 13, Texas 12, Oregon 10, Ole Miss 8. What's that tell you about Ole Miss?
They should have been better last year.
Yeah. And then 7, Alabama, Florida, LSU, Miami, all tied with Michigan. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The top 10 teams, 7 South, 3 North. But again, like overall, like depth of talent, right? We just said it was only like 11 difference North and South. So it really matters, I think, that you look at schools. Iowa State 4, Syracuse 4, Colorado 4, Boston College 3, Kansas State 3, Minnesota 3, Pitt 3, Rutgers 3. That really matters. That those schools are not sitting out the draft. They have dudes. Mohamed Touré is transferring from Rutgers. How do you feel about that?
I know. I was bummed to see that. Yeah. I meant to send you a message about it yesterday when I saw it. I had missed. I usually have notifications for Pete Nakos at On 3 on, so I can see who's transferring. But I turned them off because he was tweeting stuff about the draft before I saw the picks. So, but then I caught up to everything. I was like, oh, Mohamed Touré transferred.
I thought you were going to say you have Mohamed Touré notifications set, which also would totally make sense.
What if I had notifications set for every player in the North and my phone just didn't stop buzzing?
Oh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Also an off-season project for you. So we have some other stuff popping in the North, but we wanted to finish this. We really wanted to finish this draft because it's telling us something. And this is the last thing. Our teams who did not have many guys picked. Mm-hmm. One pick each. Illinois, Cincinnati, Michigan State, Purdue, West Virginia, Washington, Utah. 2 of our 28 schools did not have a draft pick. BYU and Northwestern. So Northwestern, again, like in the last decade, has had multiple first-round picks in a way that's like, don't forget Peter Skoronski and Greg Newsome and Rashawn Slater came through Northwestern. They know how to do talent there at times, right? They're also continually, like they are getting slapped in the face by the portal in some very difficult ways. They just lost another starting offensive lineman to the portal. They've got to figure that out. Is BYU the best college football team to ever have nobody drafted?
I asked you how many times has a team won 10 games and had nobody drafted. I don't know the answer to that. I can't imagine it's happened very often, at least not with a power conference team.
So like we had Jacob Robinson in the secondary, second team All North at the end of the year. Great player. Tyler Batty, great player. Neither of them drafted. So it doesn't mean BYU lost 0 good players, but be on alert for what BYU also might do this year. Also, Hinckley Rapati's in the transfer portal.
Yeah, they still have LJ Martin, though.
They do. But we like the 2-back system. I know it's hard.
We do. Yeah, it is hard. I think, like, to your point, BYU won 10 games, had nobody drafted, but still was only returning 61% of its production. And that was actually before some transfer portal stuff, so it's lower than that. So it's not like it's a juggernaut necessarily, but it is interesting that they were so good and had nobody drafted.
But also, is this an extra nod toward Kalani Sitake knows what he is doing, man?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I think that's right.
Like, let's give the guy respect because, and we understand they're not playing Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Georgia, Alabama, and Texas every week, but also that's a good conference and they won. And they played great ball all year. And made winning plays. Darius Lassiter, who again was trying to get the extra year with the junior college stuff and couldn't get it, I think was a tremendous receiver for BYU last year. Didn't get drafted, but is an incredible college player. So I'm on alert for what BYU still could be this year. And then Utah. Utah had one guy drafted. It was a 6'8" tight end who played 57 snaps last year. It was like he's been a basketball player or something. It was like a projection pick. It was not a production pick. So we talked about Utah as a school that needs to work the portal more. And they are. They're also losing some guys in the portal. We can have like a very interesting Utah conversation here in a couple weeks. But they didn't lose anybody. They didn't lose anybody to the draft. Who played like I had one draft pick and he didn't really play. Again, I'm on alert for Utah. Does this like this? This is not like, oh no, what's wrong with Utah? This is to me like be on alert for a Utah bounce back in 2025.
Yeah, I think that I'm more there. I was actually peeking ahead to some 2026 mock drafts, and both of Utah's offensive tackles, were projected in some first rounds. Which I thought was
We're sending you. You're going to Utah. Yeah. You're going to go talk tackles with Utah this year.
I'd love to. Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu. Very good. Did Brant Keithy sign with anybody? Cowboys?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Did he? Good tight end. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I don't get like Dalton Kincaid was like a 2nd or 3rd round pick at a Utah tight end a couple years ago, and Brant Keithy didn't get drafted. But
Brant Keithy's like he's been hurt too much probably. But
yeah. Other one I want to talk about is Illinois. Just Pat Bryant. And I think Brett Bielema told the local reporters at Illinois that like scouts are already telling him like, you got a bunch of guys on the roster this year. This is not to me, what's wrong with Illinois? This is Illinois has a lot back. So please be aware. And they added. And so this is more confirmation to me to be on the 2025 Illinois bandwagon.
I'm there with you too. because they're gonna like Luke Altmaier's. I think will get drafted. They're gonna have guys on both lines get drafted, secondary get drafted. Like they're, I don't know what Illinois' largest draft class ever is, but maybe they'll be looking at something approaching that next year. Because this is like if you combine this team won a lot of games, this team didn't have a lot of guys drafted, this team still returns a lot of production. Like that is the Illinois profile.
Yes.
Right now.
Yeah. Be aware. All right. That'll do it for this edition of Kings of the North. We wanted to talk about our sport. And again, like I've come down from the anger, but we didn't talk about Shedeur because we didn't want to come on here and be the 1,432nd people to have hot takes about Shedeur Sanders. But the one thing I would say from our sports standpoint is, you know, they retired the number right away, and that was something that certainly a lot of people had opinions on. Again, on the list of things to be angry about, that doesn't rise super high for me.
There were some former Colorado players who were upset about it too, though, which is like not like their feedback I do value.
Agreed. Yeah. And if the answer to this is, well, let's make sure we retire Cordell Stewart's number, great. Then get Cordell Stewart's number retired this season and bring him back and have a ceremony and honor that guy. But the thing that I don't think has been lost, it just has not been at the forefront of the discussion, is Colorado football was dead. Colorado football was dead as it can be because Mel Tucker had left and they had been in a weird spot and you didn't know what they were going to do. And the sport was changing around them. And they just came off an incredibly exciting season where they tied for first in their conference and had the Heisman Trophy winner and gave Colorado football fans a lot of awesome Saturdays. And that is why we're here in the end. We are here for college football fans to enjoy their college football teams. And that has happened for Colorado fans. And that has been an overwhelming success. And Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders and the way that they sort of invite and criticism at times and get in off-field battles. You know, they seem to be angry about the perception of the draft. And it's like, it's not about the perception of the draft. It's like, this is where you got picked. This is not the media getting you all that. I just don't want to lose sight of Colorado football was awesome this year. And we had a great time talking about it. And Deion Sanders didn't leave just because his sons left. And I think Colorado football is going to be pretty darn interesting again this year. And that is not where Colorado football was at all before Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, and Travis Hunter got there. And that is where the real value comes. Best of luck to Shedeur Sanders in the NFL. Best of luck to Travis Hunter. And I think maybe now that his sons are gone, maybe Deion can come down 20%. Like with the just getting in fights about stuff, but also like maybe the media can come down 20% with looking to fight with Colorado. Because the bottom line is they played awesome ball this year. And isn't that the point?
I think it is the point. It definitely got lost in the conversation. I get they're two different conversations. I'm not saying like anyone who's having a conversation about Shedeur Sanders from the NFL perspective was wrong to have it. It's just that don't let what you just said get lost within that. And the other thing that did annoy me though is like the constant referrals to like what Colorado was as like the quote unquote circus, right? By people whose companies fed into it as it was happening. Just sent them to Boulder when frankly it didn't really warrant going there. It's like, yeah, it was a circus. It didn't have to be. Like you help make it that, so they don't complain about it on the back end because whatever, it's dominating your draft conversation. But I 100% agree with you. Like what Shedeur did for Colorado football, what Deion is currently doing, what Travis Hunter did was awesome, and they have resurrected a dormant program. They're not in the national title contenders, but into something that is fun for Colorado fans to watch, and it's great.
Yeah. And listen, like Lance Leipold's doing it in Kansas, and Greg Schiano's doing it at Rutgers, and PJ Fleck is doing a great job at Minnesota. There's lots of coaches who are doing a great job of building up programs and providing great Saturday moments for their fans. But like also, Deion Sanders is doing that at Colorado. So that'll do it. We'll be back on Wednesday. How much offensive line research have you done for Wednesday's show already? How many hours of research?
Like the whole back half of this notebook is offensive line stuff. So
yeah. Yeah. So get ready for that, because we thought maybe we were doing offensive line on this show, and then we decided to push it back to Wednesday. But Landis is going to smother you with offensive line knowledge about the North, about who's got great offensive lines coming back, whose offensive lines are really kind of under the gun for this season, like the strategies of offensive line building in modern college football. And we'll do all that on Wednesday, plus what you're watching, what you're eating, what you're thinking. And we'll try to work in, I think, a couple of your comments here at askkotn@gmail.com. Great job by our producer, Mike Urostowski, as always, making us look good and sound good. Thanks to you guys so much for being here. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.